Hello, I am Peter Forest7890 and welcome to my Tales discussion video with the two people joining me in this discussion today is Swordfish1390 and ForestReviews. Welcome guys, and how are you doing this fine evening, or in Sword case, early morning?
I'm doing lovely, thank you for having me.
I'm doing good.
Anyway, I decided to have this discussion since, well, this is basically a replacement for the Tales stream that we had thought of doing, but couldn't because, well, you can't stream Tales of Zestiria on the PS4, sadly. But we are also doing this discussion because we're all big fans of the Tales games. We played quite a few of them and have generally loved our time with the games. Anyway, for this discussion, I'll be asking a few general questions about the Tales series, and we'll answer them, and we'll just go from there. And this is mostly unscripted. We just have some bullet points about the questions I'm going to ask, and that's it. So, this will be interesting. Anyway, firstly, what elements of the Tales series drew you to it? For me personally, I'd probably say it's the linear, the combat system of the Tales series. When I first played it, I didn't play many RPGs, mostly because not many of them were really my style. I just mostly played platformers and action-y type of games. But once I saw the Tales game's combat system, I really that really drew me to them. As well as the anime style, because I really love anime when I was growing up as a kid. I still love anime. I love watching Dragon Ball Z. I even watched Berserk when I was a kid. So yeah, the combat system, the anime influence you could see in the Tales series, that really drew me into it. How about you, Force and Sword?
Well, for me, actually, it goes back to the PS2 generation, and actually Legendia was the very first Tales game in the franchise I played. It was a game that really was different to me. I remember playing it for the first time and just experiencing the music that involved around the world. Some of the songs that I heard in that game just kind of hit me. I think the atmosphere of that Tales game just hit the right notes for me. Not just that, but of course its combat is just as important as music in any game would be. But the music was one of the main things of what I liked about Legendia. But the combat at that time was, was side to side. It was almost like a side scroll kind of game. It was an action game, but it played side scroll like, because you didn't have the ability to freely move on the field. But I liked the combat in that game. It was fun. I liked the environments of the area. The music was just the best aspect of the game, in my honest opinion. And after playing that game for the first time in the series, the elements of like the arts and the characters and just the overall way the game was presented made me want to play other Tales games. And then after that, I bought Tales of the Abyss and stuff like that. But that was kind of some of the things and the aspects of that game that I liked about the elements of the game in general.
So I think one of the main things that drew me to it was the art style, because I remember back when I was in middle school, I saw I had a Game Informer magazine, and then it showed a preview of Tales of Vesperia, which wasn't out yet, and I was like, oh, this looks really charming, and I just really liked the look of it, and then I found out that there was a demo available for free on the Xbox Live, so I got that, and I was like, oh my god, this is really fun. I love the art style. I do love anime. Even though at the time I wasn't into anime, I haven't really watched it, I did love that. I did love that Japanese combat was fun, and then the characters, what little I saw them in the demo, were really interesting to watch, and I liked their chemistry despite, again, knowing much about them. So I think that Vesperia was the initial spark that made me get into it. So, and then once I got into the Tales series later, most of the Tales games that I played had the things about the Vesperia demo that I liked. That the characters, the combat, the art style. So I think it was really all those things that that Vesperia hit the nail on the head that piqued my interest in this series. So I think it was the art style and the combat were at first the sparks, and then I found out that the other games of the series had their own strengths as well. It wasn't just those two things. So I think that was general what kind of made me become a fan of the series.
So we're not being anime back then, huh? That's a far cry from today.
Well, that's my religion now.
Anyway.
That's all I do.
Yep. Okay, next question. Of the many ongoing RPG series, role-playing game series out there, such as Final Fantasy, the E series, Elder Scrolls, how high does Tales series rank up with them? For me personally, the Tales series is like my second favorite franchise of all time. With the first being Fire Emblem. The Tales series is basically my Final Fantasy for many people. Other people's Final Fantasy VII is basically, for me, Tales of Symphonia. I just have such fond memories with that game, which really did make me a Tales fan. And I just love the series so much to this day. Whenever I play a new game such as Desteria, I really dig my claws into them, even though I am trying to slow down a bit since I do want to record some footage and I'm waiting for a converter. But I still have so much fun with the series, and there's just so many good things that the series does for me that makes me coming back to it. The combat systems, the enjoyable and likable and good cast of characters the games usually have, the progression systems. I think the Tales series overall, the series just have such a good variety of games in there. While with the games being reminiscent of each other, but still doing their own thing to stand out from each other. How about you, Forrest?
Well, for me, it would rank probably second, and first being the Xenosaga franchise. And the reason why I can't really rate it number one, and primarily because the Xenosaga games had a very deep, richening, and very context information-wise when it came down to its story. And while each Tales game in its own right is different, it makes each one feel unique. And because of that, whenever you play a Tales game, whether it be Zestiria, Symphonia, Abyss, it doesn't matter which one it is, every game has its own uniqueness to it. And whenever you play those games, you really do feel like each one does feel like it's trying something different, while retaining some of the what makes a Tales game a Tales game. So I would say, in terms of how you put it with Final Fantasy VII, it seems to be Symphonia that most people remember as a game that kind of, when you think the Tales games, you think Symphonia. But for me, although I don't really have much to say on Symphonia at the moment, I would say that in terms of me playing Symphonia, it is definitely a game that I can see why it has a lot of following when you think comparison to Final Fantasy VII. I do think that the series, for me, as far as the second, it has a lot of different games out there that makes it different.
For me, Tales is actually tied for my favorite franchise with the Shin Megami Tensei series. I love them both to death for different reasons. I mean, for Shin Megami Tensei, you got Persona 3, Persona 4, Digital Devil Saga, Devil Summoner 2. You got a whole smorgasbord of excellent games, and you look at the Tales series, and they have an equally amount of great Tales games. So, I mean, they both have a certain appeal, where the Shin Megami Tensei series generally has a very dark and brooding atmosphere to them, whereas the Tales series kind of has a more enriching type atmosphere, and then each Tales game is thematically different for the most part. So I think that both of them have their own equal appeal, and all the games are different for their own reasons. So I definitely think Shin Megami Tensei and Tales are tied for my personal favorite RPG franchises. As much as I love, I like Final Fantasy and Elder Scrolls and Xenosaga and all that good stuff, but I definitely think that those two are my personal favorites, and they really shine through the rest of the pack in terms of RPGs that we've seen nowadays.
Okay, to the next question. What aspect of the Tales game do you think the games excel at? If I were to be very specific, I would say the combat systems themselves and the characters. I think the Tales series does a fantastic job of designing its combat system. It's in-depth, fun, and there's really a lot to take in for the combat system. And I think the Tales series does a great job of not only doing great combat systems, but also doing a variety of combat systems, with it still retaining the linear motion battle system foundation, but still either building up on it, but as well as changing it to make each game's combat system very unique on its own. And I also think that the Tales series excel at making characters. They make them very, very likable. They bounce off each other well, and in some of the games, the character development that these characters go through is very interesting, like in Tales of the Abyss for Luke. And overall, if I were to limit two things that I think the Tales game do extremely well at, it's combat systems and the characters.
The one thing I would have to say that the Tales series does well or excels at would be character skits. It's something you don't really see in any other franchise of games that I know of, where you walk around and you get to hear the discussions based on the environments or landscapes that you see, landmarks that you may run across, and based on that, you will get an interesting conversation. You guys remember the infamous line from Tales of Xillia, the one with Tico.
Teach me about bazongas!
Yep, that line. So stuff like that is just creative to me, because this broadens off of what Peter said about the characters.
Amen. Painful finish from Grace's F. That's where it's at.
True.
Hubert Pesquil.
True. But you get to see the development of the characters through this, open dialogue conversation that you otherwise wouldn't get in other typical JRPG games. So it really, I think in that regard, that's where I feel this series does excel at extremely.
I think that the Tales games excel in several areas. I do agree with the combat, and that, I would say that Shintai has actually said this same exact thing, and I agree with him, in that the Tales series is the action RPGs of Final Fantasy, and I think that holds a lot of ground, and I do think that the Tales games, they usually retain the same combat systems, but they add their own little mechanics to it, and their own quirks to it to make it unique. Most Tales games have Overlimit, and then Tales of the Abyss introduced free run, etc., etc. So that makes them familiar yet new at the exact same time, and I think that's what makes it really work. The characters, also another very strong part of this series. Again, Peter also mentioned Luke and the character development, and this applies to pretty much every Tales game. I can't really think of a Tales game that I played where I thought, wow, that cast was bad. There's an area where the series really shines as well because of the character development, and Forrest mentioned the skits, and this really does well in showing how the characters interact with each other, and it's not exclusive to cutscenes. So they could go to a new town and say, press select to view what the characters think of this town, and then they'll bicker and banter, and then they'll talk about favorite foods and things like that, and that's what makes the characters and skits so fun to watch, and that's what makes them feel so enriching and developed. Now, people can say what they want about the overall writing and the stories, even if I generally don't agree with it, to be honest. I think it's because they have a very anime-style feel to it, and that doesn't apply to a lot of people here in the West, or rather appeal to them in the West. I think it's more of a cultural difference rather than being outright bad. I think it's just a matter of, do you like that anime style of writing, or no? If you do, then you'll love it, vice versa. So,
I think it's mostly because they see that this type of character is archetype, and they immediately think it's cliche, therefore bad, without seeing how that archetype plays out.
Well, as long as
Right.
we don't use the word cliche, we can always agree on that.
So
Because just because it's an archetype doesn't mean it can't be done well and make the character very likable.
Well,
I think
Right,
it's all about
I think
execution.
generally what matters is it doesn't have to be original. Execution is what matters, and I think that the roles that the characters
I
fill.
think and the Tales series does a great job of executing these unique cast of characters, making them very likable and making these characters really bounce off each other in a way that make them really enjoyable to watch, make us want to root for them, and just makes us much more engaged.
well,
in the
not
game.
just that, but you got to also take into account that the worlds they're in too is just as important, because you don't want to have a place or a world that's created with these characters and it doesn't fit them. Because I've played games before where characters seem like they're just not part of that galaxy. They just seem like they're off. And sometimes you got to have a balance of both good character writing, good environments that really feeds off of their personality.
Unless they're going to another world.
Yeah, I mean, I've played one Tales game where you go to a different planet, but besides that, which that was the exception.
How many
so
Tales
that
games
was
have you
fun.
played? If you played one with all you go to another world.
Moving on from that, you know what I mean, Sword.
Okay.
No, but I do want to say that overall, I think those are the main draws, and I do think, again, the story-wise specifically, that really appeals to just your taste, really. I mean, again, if you like that anime style or no, that's up to you. I generally feel that, again, what matters to me is execution, and I think that story-wise, character-wise as well, is the Tales series executes these quote-unquote, tropes that we've seen very, very well, and I think that's what makes it engaging, as well as you have the progression systems and the combat, and just, I think, all the elements of the Tales games, again, for the most part, they really mold together really well, and I think that's what makes them a joy.
Okay, moving on. What elements in the Tales game do you think the games need to work on? What aspects of the game do I want improved? That's hard.
There's not really any specific thing I can think where it's, like, bad.
I know one thing they need to work on. Matter of fact, I've already tried doing with Hysteria, but you guys don't agree with me. Gave it
goddamn!
free and free. Yes,
No.
free sauce. I don't care what you say, it doesn't. And that is why I'm going to go out on a limb and say, from now on, the one thing they need to improve is to have the ability to freely move around on the field, while at the same time balancing the actual ability to do your combos and defensive moves.
This Sparrow
Free shots for sidestepping.
Hey,
sidestep is garbage and free.
I don't care what you say. This is what I feel about it, and that's why I'm sticking to it.
Free is retarded, and all you
Okay,
people
okay,
watching
okay.
free is Hysteria.
Okay. Free works for you, for
It does, and I
give you
feel
that,
like,
okay.
in all honesty, being serious about that, I do feel like Free is a perfect example of them trying to give you the ability to do that, because some people might have complained about having that linear, motion battle system, and having that aspect of just feel like you can at least move around from an enemy. I guess the idea of it, to me, may be something they could just do from this point on. To me, that's always been one of my complaints, personally.
The one thing I think the Tales series can improve on is probably the music. I love the Tales music, but it's not as good as it can be, especially with Sakuroba working on it.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I actually heard from pretty reliable sources that the Tales studio actually forces him to stick to a specific style of music that makes it sound familiar within each game. So they really restrict him and pin him down and say, make music this way every single And then, you think, oh, well, he's just not a good composer, but then you listen to soundtracks outside of Tales, like Dark Souls, Baten Kaitos, and they're beautiful, and Star Ocean, etc. And it's like, why can't you let him do the music like that for all the games? Because they sound amazing, and then the Tales series soundtracks, for the most part, are very bleh. So I don't know why they do that. To me, that the logic there is just poof, is just non-existent.
I can see why they do that. If you really think about the fact that we're talking about a franchise, they want it to be very familiar. Like you're stepping into a new world, but it feels like you've been there before. As dumb as that is to say.
That's why I think the best...
I still wish they wouldn't do that, to be honest.
Mostly because that's because it's so different.
Yeah,
I agree, and that's one of the reasons why
it's not just good because it's different. It's good because it's well composed.
I feel like that game has.
It's a beautiful soundtrack.
It's beautiful in general.
I feel like that game has a lot of vocal soundtracks that just sticks to your mind.
Mm-hmm.
In general.
Well, I guess that's really the only thing where I think, like, almost every Tales game I play around, like, yeah, in general, yeah. Yeah,
especially free and free.
There may be some people that think the writing needs improvement, but
yeah, that's something I was talking about before, where I'm like, again, it's really just a matter of do you like that anime style or not, and it's really subjective, and I think again execution is what matters, and they take these tropes that we're familiar with and executes them well. I mean, it doesn't. A story doesn't have to be.
It doesn't break the mold.
Yeah.
It doesn't break the mold, but they do it extremely well.
Exactly, and I think that's the most important thing, because you can think of, alright, Time and Eternity, one of the most unique games I've ever played, one of the worst games I've ever played, for all reasons. So,
no, it can get worse than that, Last Rebellion.
Well, I'm sure that's really bad too, but I haven't touched it, thank God. But
Fable 3. Fable freaking 3 with the Sanctuary. They try to be unique with the menu system, and it sucks!
Yeah.
That's why I get frustrated when people say, oh, the Tales stories are always the same, and I'm like, I mean, they might have familiar elements, then have some familiar tropes, but again, that word, the big E, execution, that's what matters the most. And I mean, again, all you guys watching this can say what you want about the actual writing of the series. That's your prerogative. But me, I generally don't agree with it. Even if there are a few of the stories that I think are not great, for the most part, I mean, Tales of the Abyss says hi. That's what I say. If you're gonna say that.
Okay. Next question. What was the Tales game that introduced you to the series? For me, my first Tales game was Tales of Symphonia. But I was drawn to Tales of Symphonia most because, as I said, the combat system being so different from what I usually expect and being more in my alley, having only played action-y type of games and platformers, as well as anime style. But I didn't really know that the Tales series was a series in the first place until I went into EV Games, which is GameStop for people who live in the US. And I saw Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Legendia sitting right there between each other. It's like, oh, I play Tales of Symphonia, so this is a series. So I bought Tales of the Abyss and Legendia, really enjoyed them, and just became a fan from that point onward. How about you, Sword?
Technically, what got me into it was Tales of the Abyss. That was my very first Tales game, so there's a little bit of a story where when I was in middle school, I remember specifically 8th grade, where I went to the store, GameStop, and then I was looking for any RPG, really, and then I found Tales of the Abyss on the shelf. I've never heard of it, did not know it was a series. I thought Tales of the Abyss, I didn't really have enough, I think I went in there for a specific game, so I didn't buy that. I scrolled through the menu. I was like, oh, this looks cool. I'll think about it later. Whatever. And it just, I don't know, I kind of forgot about it. But then what got me interested again was, earlier in the video when I was talking about that Game Informer, I saw Tales of Vesperia. I was like, why does this sound familiar? Wait, Tales of Vesperia, Tales of the Abyss. I was like, oh shit, this is a whole series. So what happened was, again, I got the Vesperia demo, so even though Abyss was technically my first full Tales game, Vesperia was like the initial spark. That was like the appetizer. So, you know, because the thing is, at the time, Vesperia wasn't out yet. It was still in, it was going to be released in the coming weeks, actually, I think, at the time. So I did get Tales of the Abyss, which that was like the full course meal. That was what really got me into it. I played it, I was like, this game is awesome, and then I just got all the other Tales games, not all, but a lot of the other Tales games. I've beaten so many to this point where it's thanks to mostly Abyss and Vesperia that really got me into the series and just introduced me to this whole franchise that I absolutely adore to this day.
Forrest?
Well, I kind of spoiled it in the beginning when we started the video, but let me actually tell you what happened and what got me into it. So, I was actually going out one day to Fry's Electronics. I was looking for a new game to play. And at this particular time, this was probably 2000. Well, I don't remember what year it was. I know it was in the mid-2000s. And pretty much I was looking at a whole slew of JRPGs on the PS2. But I remember seeing Abyss and Legendia on the shelf brand new. I remember seeing both of them there. Legendia was $20 new, and I believe Abyss was $30. And I was like, well, I've never heard of these games before. I've never played them. But at the time, I was on a budget. I'm like, I can do 20. I don't know if I can do $30 game right now. So it was because of the price point was actually the reason why I bought Legendia over Abyss. You could believe it. But I remember playing that game, and I was like, this is definitely different from what I've been playing. Because prior to that, I never actually played Persona before. So Persona came a little bit later, but this game was totally different because prior to this, I was playing all Final Fantasy games mostly. It was either Final Fantasy this or Final Fantasy that. So my knowledge of JRPGs didn't start expanding until I started playing games like the Tales of games and then Persona and stuff like that. But I remember playing Legendia and just was completely lopsided by the fact this game was so different. It was so unique, and the voice acting was so unique to its aspect of its gameplay. Just everything about Legendia to me was just different. And that was pretty much what got me into the series after that.
I hear that, Sword. I hear yourself restraining yourself.
I have the shackles on, like the Hulk.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're about to get to those shackles, and they're about to come off very soon, sure right, Peter?
Okay. Not yet. What is your favorite Tales game in the series? For me personally, it'd be probably Tales of the Abyss. It got a great combat system. Not as good as the Tales of Vesperia, Graces, both the other games, Zestiria. But I think the thing that really drew me the most to it is the writing. The characters were so well done. They're not the most likable cast of characters in the series, I think. I think that'd be Vesperia. But they're probably the most believable, with most of them having believable flaws to them, as well as having likable characteristics, even with those flaws. And the game story doing a good job of explaining why they're flawed this way, what happened to them in the past, and the character development done with these characters is also done extremely well, such as with Luke, as I said before. And I like it that that Tales of the Abyss tried to does a concept that we've heard before, which is like your future is set in stone, it is fulfill your prophecy, but it does it in a way that flips it and makes you think that maybe having your entire future set in stone isn't such a grand idea, a good idea as it is. It tells you the possible cons that such a concept can bring, and I love it for that. It takes something we know, and it flips it, basically telling us what would happen if such a thing really did exist in the world, And I think the Tales of Abyss does an extremely good job of that.
I pretty much mirror everything you said, really. I don't really have anything to say. Abyss is also my favorite. I think what you said about the characters is pretty spot on because they all feel really human. Like, they don't really feel like characters. It's like they all have their own individual flaws, and they've done things in the past that, later on in the game actually kind of come back and haunt them. And then, all the development, especially with Luke, how he turns from a spoiled little princess into this really altruistic, just generally caring person, and he wants to atone for the crimes he's committed. No spoilers. The combat system, while it hasn't aged as all that well, I mean, it hasn't aged badly, but it shows its age.
Hashtag free run broken.
Yes.
Hashtag free run broken.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, and it did introduce a lot of things, like, obviously, free run, mystic arts. Even though Symphony technically had mystic arts, they were very obscure and impossible to pull off. And just for the record, even though even though it was my first Tales game, it's not my favorite because it was my first. I mean, a lot of people kind of have that, where it's like, oh, Symphonia was my first and it's my favorite, and that's cool. But I don't know. That's just not generally how I am with that sort of thing. So again, Abyss is my favorite because Peter said it took all the words out of my mouth. If you want to know my thoughts, rewind the video about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I stole your thunder. I stole your thunder, didn't I? I stole your thunder.
Yeah, this was not my time.
Well, you're gonna have your thunder back for the next question.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have your thunder back for the next one.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be storming it up.
Well, because seems like whatever Sword just said is the opposite of me. Legendia is my favorite Tales game in the series, and in fact, is also the first game I ever played in the series. So everything that Sword said is reverse psychology in my case. Now here's the bottom line. I know the game hasn't aged very well. I know the game also has blocky graphics, and I know that the gameplay is very bleak, if not the greatest thing in the world. But the appeal of the game's atmosphere and the characters and its music, and I'm going to keep emphasizing the music here because it's that damn good. That
it's godly level. Godly level.
Yes, it's that good. There's an appeal to that game that, even though the other Tales games, when it comes to its gameplay mechanic, is improved drastically, its characters may be more enriching and more developed because of technology and the fact that they've been able to improve on this over the years. Without a doubt, I will not deny that the game hasn't aged that well. But it still is one of my favorite Tales games. It is my favorite Tales game because just something about it connected me with that game. So that won't ever change.
Okay, let's move on to the more controversial question now. And it's going to be controversial because maybe some people won't like what we say.
Yep. I have to say, they're going to love what I got to say.
What is your least favorite Tales game in the series, or what is your most hated game in the series? I say least favorite to me because I don't really hate any of the Tales games. I think most of the Tales games I've played personally are at least decent games at worst. I don't think they're like... But my least favorite game would probably be Radiant Mythology, the PSP game. Mostly because there's nothing going for it. It's basically a crossover game and that's it. You just have characters interact with each other, and that's it. There's nothing there's nothing unique about this particular title. It just basically you got all these Tales characters interacting with each other. The combat system is stock. The story is stock. The music is extremely stock. It's the most safe Tales game I think there is in the series, and that is disappointing.
I must add to that with the fact that I've actually owned the Japanese versions of the second one and the third one, and
I heard that they were far better.
They are miles improved. We also got to mention too, these games are not in the main storyline, and this game allows you to build your own character. So you could say it's a fans.
That's another aspect.
You could say it's a fan service type of Tales game. It's not really. It's more like if you really don't mind that it doesn't follow the typical inline story, where just you make your own character and just kind of go with it.
I don't mind that, but I still want.
Okay.
I still want each game in the Tales series to be their own beast. But Tales of Rain and Mythology felt so stock to me. There's nothing drawing me to it, basically.
Yeah, I really have no interest in touching it. I'm generally not a fan of crossover games in general.
My least favorite Tales game is, in fact, my most also hated Tales game. It is Tales of the Abyss. And here's the reason why. I think Luke's a very annoying, obnoxious, very redundant character. And I feel like his development just sideswipes all of what makes the game to be more enjoyable, just gets destroyed. I also don't like the battle system. I think the game pace is slow, and I don't like the world because it just lags and it just has such very bad frame rate problems.
Yeah, the world map
is just not that good. And not only that,
so slow.
I thought in some areas of the game it felt kind of boring. I really have to say that nothing about that game appealed to me. In fact, even the main character made
Incoming backtracking. Oh god.
Yeah.
This is so much backtracking.
I think there's backtracking like almost every Tales game. I don't understand why Abyss gets singled out when there are other Tales games that are just as bad, if not even worse, than Tales of the Abyss in terms of backtracking. See Tales of Symphonia.
I just think it's a terrible game. Now, I will say this, though.
Well, Tales of Symphonia doesn't have a slow-ass world map system
I
like
will
Abyss.
tell you this, though. Even though it would rank up being my least favorite Tales game, at one point in time, which it's somewhat still slightly true, I would say it was an equal for a while. Symphonia 2 and Abyss were equally my least favorite, equally in every way possible. And now that I think about it, they still are equally my least favorite Tales games. But I would think Abyss is slightly more my least favorite. Symphonia 2 regained some kind of honor, but to a point, it's still my least favorite in an equal fashion.
What is your least favorite?
Well, I do want to say that technically my least favorite was Tales of the Tempest, but the thing is, I haven't beaten it. It's awful, it's abysmal, but haven't beaten it. You know what I mean? I played it with an English...
Hey, man. It's the only Tales game that was a mothership title.
And they got switched.
That got downgraded to the escort title. That has never happened.
So I do want to say that, even though technically speaking, yes, that is the worst one, I don't want to give a final opinion until I beat it. But it's so bad, I always put it off. Out of all the ones I did beat, I do think, yes, that's what it's controversial. Legenda, to me, is the bottom. It's just... There are things about it I like. I do like some things. The music is gorgeous. It had a unique world. I like the idea that you're on this floating ship. When I say characters, I like the main cast specifically. I hate all the villains. The Orsorn are fucking annoying, and the bouncers. I hate all of them, but characters like Chloe, Senel, Will, all those people that join your actual battle party, I like. So it had a lot of things going for it, but the execution was fucking terrible. I mean, again, the story was a unique idea, but it is so fucking stupid in its execution. It is so like, there are so many moments where I'm like, I had a giant question mark above my head. I'm like, what? And then I don't want to go into detail because of spoilers and because it isn't even the point of the video, but it is very, very poorly told despite a really good idea, and the graphics are some of the worst I've ever seen, actually, and the combat it's like, I understand that it was made by this, I think it was the Soul Calibur team, yeah, the Soul Calibur team, and it shows, but the thing is, the execution of the combat is very sloppy, and like there's a lot of, especially when you get further in the game, there's more characters that join your party as well as more enemies, and the special effects of your attacks get more elaborate. Everything gets really clustered and very, like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, and it's just, the random encounter rate and the dungeons all look exactly the same. They're just palette swaps of each other. The puzzles are, what the fuck was the point in them in the first place? I fucking hate that.
Especially since you can skip the puzzles, some of the puzzles at least.
Yes.
Like
what the fuck was the point of putting them there if you could fucking skip them? They didn't fucking even try with them.
Hey! At least they let us skip on the more annoying one.
You know what's crazy? And the fact is that I know I had so much hatred for Virginia, but I wanted to get started on Symphonia 2 because I can go on.
Hold on. And the thing is, hold on. I want to say this. People who bitch about backtracking in Abyss, in Legendia, after the main story, all the character quests, you do every fucking dungeon again. All of them. You do every single one. Again.
You only do it twice of each.
I know, you have to go through every fucking dungeon that you did in the main story. Again, in Abyss and other Tales games, you backtrack to locations from time to time. In Legendia, you do all the places. Okay, you beat the main, do all of them again. It's like Devil May Cry 4 syndrome, but even worse because none of the dungeons are fun to go through. They all look the fucking same.
You know, I gotta point out something here. I gotta point this out. I try to make best to compose myself equally, because although I did say I equally have a distaste for both Abyss and Symphonia 2, I must admit that I don't have as much hatred as he does for Legendia. I will say this, really gotta be honest, that Symphonia 2, if I had to have a hatred wise, would probably be the one I hate playing. Because initially when I played it, Emil was very obnoxious, and I didn't like his character, I didn't like his personality, but you know, I had to move on. But I have to say this, you did say our least favorite, but I gotta point out something. Abyss is my least favorite. I don't necessarily hate the game, but if I hate any game that I've ever played in the Tales franchise, it would be Symphonia 2. There's just too many things wrong with that game. Way too many things. I don't like the fact that you collect Pokemon-like characters as enemies, and you use them in battle.
See, I actually find the monster collection and evolving them to be pretty addicting, even though the execution of actually acquiring them is pretty flawed, and kind of admittedly pretty, and find that actually leveling up and teaching them new moves is actually pretty rewarding.
I don't find it equally rewarding whatsoever. But I tell you this, and the fact it doesn't have a map that you can explore anything, and you just kind of walk around a map to a dungeon area. Then, I don't understand why they kind of, because it's on the Wii, the gameplay or the way the game is, the way you do things is just awkward. Then it has motion controls built into the game, which just makes it even more awkward. And then, the worst part is taking a character who is, you know, in the first game, and then twisting the character in the second game, and then that stupid thing where Emil will be talking, then you get like a backtrack of like a scene before, and it just repeat. I hate the flashback.
Oh, the flashback.
That was pretty dumb.
And I don't really too much care for the music that much. There were a couple of songs I liked in the game, but other than that, I didn't care for it. I just don't know.
Most of the Tales music isn't very enjoyable.
Wait, Forrest. You mean you did like hearing "Courage is the magic that turns dream into reality" over and over again?
I just thought Emil was a very annoying character. Like
the thing is like I understand that Dawn of the New World is a fairly flawed game, and I can understand why.
But you know what?
People's distaste towards it, but it does appeal to me, and for personal reasons. But I could see why most people would consider it to be a disappointment.
Yes, Ward, because of that damn game, we didn't get a Tales game for years.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue.
Okay, I'm gonna throw in an extra question that I didn't thought of. What's the most surprising plot point in the Tales series for you? For me, Tales of Xillia 2 bad ending.
I gotta be honest. I'm sorry that everybody agrees with me, but that's equally. I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'm not even gonna answer a question on that one. The plot of that ending of the second Xillia. Yeah.
Mostly because in most JRPGs, the choice that would prompt the bad ending would probably be the right choice. Mostly because JRPGs are generally inspiring. Mostly trying to find a way where a good outcome will come. Zero 2 doesn't do that for its bad ending. It's dark. It's hella dark. I mean, Tales of Xillia 2 overall is already a dark game. Is already a dark game already, but the bad ending is hella dark, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. The boss fight you do.
Yeah, I'm
it's
listening
hard.
to these guys. We get to the end of the game. It's like, hey, dude, go to the right. Just choose the same choice. Go to the right. Go to the right. So I go to the right, thinking, okay, I'm just gonna keep saying the same thing. Go to the right. Go to the right. I didn't realize what the ending really was. Holy shit. Okay. It took me like 6 hours to beat him. Ridiculous.
And I think the ending, the bad ending, isn't too out of nowhere. You can see why.
Absolutely.
Luke
I gotta
choose
admit,
that.
I gotta give him credit for if you've played the Xillia 2, it actually it comes out of left field in terms of how when you play the game, you actually get a vision of what the ending was of what actually transpired. I don't want to spoil it, but it's like repeating what happened actually happened.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, I was like, wait a minute. So we just did exactly what happened, but it actually happened. That's freaking crazy. And the way they walked away from that scene,
prophetic,
and it just went to credits. I was like, damn, they didn't get two shits.
when Tales of 2 is just the most interesting and
I think I would
interesting
agree.
problem.
It's easily the most shocking
There's
and
other-
jaw-dropping event I've probably seen in a tale.
Yeah.
It's a sight, honestly. That's one of the ballsiest things I've ever seen an RPG do in general. Like, it was holy shit.
I would like
it
to
has to be
spoil
seen
it.
to be believed.
I would like to spoil it, but it is too epic to say. It's just
Yeah, you really got to see it for yourself.
Okay. Another question I just thought of, and this is going to be spoilery, though. I'm going to put an annotation here where you can skip it. But what is your favorite one-on-one fight?
Oh, I have a tie between two. Mine, I wish I could pick one. It's a tie between the fight with Luke and Ash from Abyss and also the fight with Luger and Julius in Xillia 2 for completely different reasons.
It'd probably be tied for me with Luke and Ash, and as well as in Xillia, again when Elvin versus.
Oh yes,
Jude.
that fight was amazing.
I'll probably say that I really like the Luke vs. Ash fight because this fight basically symbolizes that Luke has finally found his worth in life as well as his path to follow, standing on his own 2 feet, which is in stark contrast where after Azariev, he was pretty lost in how he should perceive of what happened after Azariev, but knowing that he needed to change. But then we also see more why Ash feels the way he does about Luke. And this fight overall is a very triumphant and inspiring part of the story, I feel. Now for the Jude vs. Elvin fight, I also really like it, but for the opposite reasons I do for Luke vs. Ash. Kind of. I like how intense this fight is. This fight is really intense and comes as a result of both Jude and Elvin not knowing what to do after a certain plot point happens, and they're entirely lost in what they're supposed to do. But it's also through their struggle that Jude himself knows that he can't just lie around and feel sorry for himself and know that he needs to move on from the traumatic event that happened in the game and needs to stand on his own 2 feet. Alvin also realizes this, but a bit later, though the events of the fight does make him realize this. Both fights I feel are done really well, but I probably feel that the Jude vs. Alvin fight is better if you lose the fight.
What's yours, Force?
I don't have one.
Oh, you still don't? Okay.
No, I'm gonna have to sit this question out. I really don't. I never. Every fight that I've ever played in any Tales game that I've played, I've never actually had a one-on-one fight where I felt like, oh my god, this is great.
Next question.